Andrew and Courtney Simpson, though childless, had been happily married for over a decade. Having children was something both of them desired, but they waited until they were confident in their careers and could financially support a family on one income. Both in their 30s and successful lawyers, Drew was a civil litigation attorney, while Courtney worked in contract law for a well-known local firm in their hometown. They had finally reached a point financially where they agreed to attend their first American Bar Association National Convention, something they had been looking forward to. On the long drive to the headquarter hotel they had booked for the event, their main conversation was about having children. They both agreed it was time, but Courtney admitted she felt anxious about the prospect. On Wednesday night, at the board's reception, things began to unravel. Things started off well, with both of them enjoying the atmosphere and the company of fellow lawyers. Later in the evening, after the formal part of the reception, with more drinking, dancing, and loud conversation, Drew noticed Courtney in a playful mood, which was by no means a bad thing, as it always led to a marathon of lovemaking for the night. Courtney was a beautiful woman with a vivacious personality, though a bit unreliable and always flirtatious. That night was no exception. On the other hand, Drew was more composed and conservative, which was quite unusual for a trial lawyer. At social gatherings, Drew tended to blend into the background. He genuinely enjoyed watching people, observing how they interacted. If someone initiated a conversation, Drew would immediately engage, but he was rarely the first to start a conversation with someone he didn't know. He spent a considerable amount of time on the dance floor that night, dancing with many partners, and looking forward to returning to their hotel room. When his gaze met his wife's deep green eyes, his eyes lit up, and there was a smoky sexiness in her eyes that made him ready to take her away right there in the club. She leaned forward, revealing most of her thigh and ample chest, and whispered in agreement, murmuring, "I'm going to have fun tonight, darling." She didn't take her eyes off him. "I can see it, I can feel it, baby, let's go back to our room." She looked around. "Darling, look around. We've never been to this small town before. Do you know anyone here?" Drew instinctively looked around. "No, I don't think so." "What's wrong? Do you want to have fun tonight?" He couldn't help but notice her emphasis on eyes. He was shocked. He was acutely aware of what she was saying, though he was deeply hurt, severely wounded, and like an experienced trial lawyer, he instinctively knew not to show his true feelings. Drew couldn't fathom where this was coming from. The only possible warning sign he could point to was his wife's reluctance to have children, which she had just agreed to. "I know, but what about our relationship?" She ignored his question. She wasn't a trial lawyer, but she knew how to interrogate a witness and knew not to let her adversary distract her. She sighed, firmly holding his hand on her Volvo. "Have I been a good wife? In the 15 years we've been together, since we became an exclusive relationship in our freshman year, have you ever doubted my love and complete devotion to you for a moment? Give me one time, one example, just one. I know I love to flirt, but when you see me doing it, have you ever doubted me?" You would think she had just made the simplest rookie mistake a lawyer could make, asking a question she didn't know the answer to, but there was no mistake, because she knew the answer. "No, I have never doubted your commitment to our relationship until 30 seconds ago." "Why now?" He accepted the inevitable, and she seemed unusually quiet. In the flashing lights, loud music, bouncing chest, and DJ's nightclub, surrounded by more than 200 drunken lawyers, they spoke in a normal voice, but they didn't miss a syllable from each other. "I told you I was ready to have a child. I just wanted this weekend to be mine. I deserve it, and I will throw away the contraceptives on Monday, for our future." She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms over her chest, emphasizing her plump cleavage, and let him know the conversation was over. "I understand. Have you chosen someone?" He naturally already knew the answer to his question. "Yes," she replied quietly but firmly. "Okay, one last question. What kind of reward are you willing to pay?" "What kind of reward?" "Don't joke with me, you are a contract lawyer, you know what compensation is. What are you willing to offer me? What price are you willing to pay?" Now he was about to lose control. He was shocked, his life was collapsing rapidly. "Honey, the only price being discussed is your ego. I know I will hurt you by doing this, and I will spend the next 30 years making that pain go away. It has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday night, and we don't have to check out before Saturday morning. I will be back in our hotel room on Friday night, and we will start practicing to have a child. Everything will be fine. This was the end of more than 15 years together, more than 10 years of marriage, the family we will never have. No baby showers, birthday parties, first day of school, graduations, brides or grandchildren bouncing on our laps. She just admitted to deliberately hurting her husband, intentional misconduct, and if she wanted to, she didn't even blink. Well, I'm going to bed. I don't know when I'll see you. He turned and walked away without looking back. He heard her calling him, but he no longer cared what she said. This is better than I expected, Courtney thought smugly. What was that about? I don't know when I'll see you. She no longer thought about it and turned her attention to her goal. She looked into his eyes and smiled seductively. She stood up and walked quietly towards him. She didn't remember his name, but she remembered they had danced some dirty dances recently. The incredible truth was that until that moment, she had never considered being unfaithful to Drew. She suddenly made a life-destroying decision she had never imagined. Drew didn't know how he managed to get back to the room. He vaguely remembered someone in the elevator asking if he was okay, but he was dizzy and slightly shocked by what had happened. Everything seemed so unreal. Just a minute ago, he was fantasizing about how great the sex would be with Courtney in the courtroom, and the next minute his marriage was over. He wasn't sure how long he sat by the bed, staring at the wall, but eventually a plan formed. He knew what he had to do and forced himself to move forward. It was just a 3.5-hour drive home, but Drew knew he had a few days to do everything. He realized that for the next 48 hours, he didn't exist for Courtney. He had enough time to do what needed to be done. He realized that the first thing was that he needed to report their joint credit card stolen in the morning. If he was lucky, some hotel maid would find Courtney's wallet left in the room and take it without reporting it. Drew wouldn't touch anything his soon-to-be ex-wife left in the room. He also thought that the hotel maid picking up the wallet would at least give him until Tuesday. The divorce itself would be simple and clean. They lived in a flawless state, with no children, no house, no joint assets. They always kept their finances separate and shared expenses equally. They made about the same amount of money, but the divorce was the easy part, starting over was the more difficult part. Drew quickly packed his bags and prepared to leave. He paused for a moment, considering leaving a note for her, but then changed his mind. He walked down the hallway towards the elevator. The sound of the room door closing automatically in the hallway echoed, signaling that he was closing the door on his old life. As he walked towards the lobby, a thought occurred to him, and he stopped at the front desk to see if everything was okay. My wife is in the car, we have an emergency at home and need to leave immediately. We left the keys in the room. He saw the nosy clerk press a few keys and realized the card was invalid. He couldn't help but smile slightly, walked out, knowing how much trouble Courtney would encounter in a few days. 7 years later, Drew sat in the hotel restaurant, drinking iced tea, waiting for his food to arrive. The seminar was indeed interesting. It should be a valuable learning experience to help his family law practice. He noticed the date on the paper left on the worn vinyl seat, almost 7 years since his last divorce. Wow, time flies. At first, he didn't realize he had said it out loud, looked around a bit embarrassed to see if anyone had heard him. He hadn't thought about Courtney for a long time, although his divorce was relatively easy, but the experience made him realize how unfair the so-called no-fault system is to the party treated unfairly. To be honest, the system exists because some people can't handle their own mess. They act like children, trying to create chaos on the other party, and the system has to intervene to solve it for them. These are the cases where no one wins in a divorce, which is actually true. Anyway, this was the motivation for Drew to change his specialty to family law. As he found out, most divorces nowadays really just happen because both parties are determined. There is rarely any argument, both parties strive to end their situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He deals with any case presented to him, but he does like dealing with the relatively rare adultery cases, where he suspects his client's spouse is trying to exert pressure on his client. His reverie was suddenly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. He looked up, incredulously seeing her. He couldn't be more shocked than being hit by a bull. "Hey, Drew, how are you?" He looked up, incredulously seeing her. He couldn't be more shocked. "Hey, Courtney. Believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What are you doing at the family law seminar?" "I'm not attending. I'm here for something else. Can I sit down?" "Sorry, of course." He gestured for her to sit down. "I'm really shocked to see you, so you have to forgive my manners." "Wow, I really don't know what to say." She straightened up and spoke in an angry tone. "You never talked to me, Drew. You never responded to any of my attempts to contact you. You never said a word to my family, including your mother who knew you very well and loved you very much. You didn't even show up at any hearings. You just left. I was on our front porch that Monday night, and I was served with the divorce papers before I walked through the door. When I finally went in, there was nothing in the apartment to remind me of you or our marriage. I understand. You destroyed our marriage in an incredibly selfish act in an instant, and I'm the bad guy. If that's all you have to say, then go away and leave me alone. Drew, I'm sorry. Now get out of here, Courtney." He became very angry, and most people in the restaurant were now looking at them. She stood up and stumbled away in tears. Just then, a whirlwind hit. It was the Chatterbox twin sisters and their little sister. They rushed towards him as usual at full speed. His wife followed them, smiling, but her smile quickly disappeared when she saw his face. Her gaze turned to Courtney's rapidly retreating figure. Was it her, right, Drew? He could only nod because he was busy dealing with the 3 children, who are now his life. Later that night, in their hotel room, after the 3 musketeers had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her?" He took a deep breath and said softly, "I thought about it in the past few years, but I guess my pride didn't let me do it, but not now. I have nothing to ask, and I'm glad I didn't give her a chance back then." "Are you kidding? That can't be true, right?" "This is very serious, Celia. If I let her talk to me, maybe she could say something that would make me change my mind. But then I would never have met you, and our 3 children would not exist. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I don't regret anything." She put her arms around her husband and kissed him. "You know how to say that to a girl, don't you, baby? But that poor woman needs to talk to you, so the least you can do is sit down and listen." "I will, but really, what's the point? All she's going to say is how sorry she is, and if I ask her why, she'll say she really doesn't know, and so on. But I'll do it for you, maybe it will help her calm down." "But why should I do this, Drew? It's better now, maybe I'll yell at her within a few minutes of seeing her. Maybe that's the way to close the past for you. Maybe you're right, but even if you and the girls are excluded, I realize that even before I met you, my life would be better without her. The divorce made me reevaluate my life and what was important to me. Oh, I did go through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage fails, but that failure made me take a close look at myself, and if she hadn't been so stupid, I would never have done it." Drew paused to think and catch his breath. They say that our greatest successes can be the result of our greatest failures, and I firmly believe that this is true in my case. I am much happier practicing family law now than I was practicing civil law before. Sometimes I start to feel like I am actually helping people. I know I don't make as much money, drive a BMW, or live in a suite overlooking the lakefront, but I am happier than ever. What about her? Maybe you should ask her that question. What's the point, Celia? I have no regrets about where I am now. He paused and continued, a little louder than a whisper. It might not be true. I do have one regret, though. I should have talked to her mother. She was a lovely lady. I know she loved me, and I liked her too. Since my parents had passed away long ago, she was like my surrogate mother. I left without talking to her. Celia really couldn't say anything more. She had hoped that somehow getting together would be good for both Drew and Courtney, but now she doubted whether it would be the case. Would she force it on Drew, only to bring back a past he no longer cared about? But could she stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't have to do anything. The meeting never took place. The night before Courtney was supposed to come to town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. She always dreaded answering the phone at that hour, fearing bad news, but she answered it instinctively. On the other end was a clearly distraught woman. "Celia, this is Angela Jones, Courtney's mother. I need to speak to Andrew." The phone call woke Drew up, and Celia handed him the receiver. "It's for you." "Andrew, it's Angela. Courtney committed suicide yesterday afternoon." That was followed by someone crying in indescribable pain. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what to say. My God, this is my fault." Drew's tears were flowing now, but there were no words. Celia heard all of this, holding her husband tightly, crying openly now, thinking that there was some guilt in it too. "Andrew, this is not your fault. She had a lot of problems, and she brought them on herself. You don't understand what happened to her after the divorce. She left you a sealed letter. I kept it from the police. No one knows about its existence except you and me. Andrew, what do you want me to do with it? Keep it for now and let me think about it. Can you do that?" "Of course, Andrew. I need you to be with me. Can you come?" "I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. I'll bring my whole family with me. I want you to meet them. I know you'll like them. I'll call you tomorrow, and we'll make a plan. Is someone with you now? You shouldn't be alone." "Yes, my friend Joyce is with me. I can't wait to meet your family. Let's talk tomorrow." The phone call ended. Courtney's memorial service was held on a cold but sunny autumn afternoon 7 days later. As promised, Drew and his family were there. There were only a few people in the audience. Apparently, despite being a very capable lawyer, Courtney didn't have any real friends. She was cremated, and her ashes would be scattered in a park where she and Drew used to date. Angela said it was the happiest time in Courtney's life. Losing her daughter was almost an unbearable burden for her, but she quickly began to love Celia, especially the 3 girls. By the end of the week, the girls called her Grammy Angie. Angela revealed what had happened in Courtney's life after Drew left. He was shocked by these revelations. The truth about adventurous behavior, drug abuse, and mental health issues after the divorce. She even explained why Courtney and Drew were at the same hotel. She disappeared for more than a week with 2 men she met at the nightclub. When she came back, she was bruised all over. According to Angela, this was not unusual. Courtney also almost lost her job partner. He was surprised at how a bad sudden decision could make Courtney's life out of control. The night before Drew's family was going home, he and Celia had a long talk and made some decisions. The next morning, Drew pulled Angela aside while Celia was busy taking care of the girls. "Mom, we need to talk about something. First, Celia and I want you to live with us. Nothing can stop you now. You don't have to decide right away, but we hope you consider it very seriously. We want you to be with us. If you decide, we will help you move here. Please think about it, okay, dear, it's so sweet for you. I promise I will think about it carefully. But I will miss her so much. She can't take it anymore." Drew hugged her as she tried to calm down. When she calmed down, he continued. "We need to talk about that letter. I think the best thing we can do is throw the unopened letter into this fireplace. This is your letter, Andrew. I know, but I will never read it. If you give it to me, I will burn it. However, I want to give you a chance to keep it. I don't know about you, but I want my memory of Courtney to last until the divorce. Your memory should also be at that time. I'm afraid that if we read this letter, we will remember her after the divorce. I don't want to have anything to do with that damn letter. I give it to you. If you decide to read it, I just ask you to never, I mean never, mention it to me. Angela was shocked by his answer but began to understand Andrew's reasons. She really wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions destroyed her life. Perhaps there was real regret there, and an awareness of how painful her decisions were. But maybe there was only more pain inside. Andrew told her about the meeting with Courtney a few weeks ago. What if Courtney only had more anger and guilt to vent to Andrew? Courtney's mental state was not good, especially since facing Andrew. Angela tore herself apart before they left. Celia also had a private conversation with Angela. Please live with us. We really want you to be a part of our family life. I don't think you realize how important you are to Drew. I promise, dear, I will consider it. It would be nice to be with the young people again, Angela said thoughtfully. As Drew and his family drove home together, with tears and hugs, Angela slumped in the living room chair, facing the fireplace. She took out the letter and stared at it intently. She knew she needed to make a decision. Thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to today's story. If you liked it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.